Today's topic I've titled Water in a Thirsty Land, but it's about more than simply water. We'll look at different projects built to direct, divert, and deliver it, as well as its recreational value. As I've shared before, it took the convergence of several things to create Redlands, without any of which the fledgling town might have failed. Climate, land, water, the railroads, the naval orange, and tourism. Remove any one of these, and very likely no Redlands, or at least not as we know it. Perhaps the most important moment in the development of what would eventually become Redlands was the creation of our irrigation ditch, known today as the Mill Creek Zanja. As we all know, in Southern California, it always comes down to water. He said it of New Mexico, but Mark Twain could just as easily have been talking about Southern California when he wrote, "Until I came to New Mexico, I never realized how much beauty water adds to a river." In his famous 1946 book, Southern California Country, An Island on the Land, journalist Carey McWilliams wrote, "The coastal plains are broken here and there by branches of the Sierra Madre and by three of the driest rivers in America, the Los Angeles, the San Gabriel, and Santa Ana." It was surely of these rivers that Mark Twain spoke when he said that he had fallen into a California river and come out all dusty. Unfortunately, McWilliams didn't footnote his book, and every reference I've found to this quote cites McWilliams. I really hope that Mark Twain actually said this, so if anybody can track down definitive proof, I would be eternally grateful. Now, I hope you'll excuse a brief autobiographical indulgence, but it will help illuminate how embedded the Mill Creek Zanja is in our cultural identity. In 1999, I was fresh out of grad school and giving a presentation about local history to a group at Smiley Library when I learned firsthand Larry Burgess's axiom that local history is personal history. I started talking to the group about the Zanja when I was interrupted by a member of the audience. Quickly, this alumna of the Redlands High School class of 1936 and University of Redlands class of 1945 shot up and said, "Excuse me, but in Redlands, we call it the Sankey." It's a lesson that you only need to learn once. So in case you haven't yet had the pleasure, here it is. Sankey. So I would say that there are only two correct ways to pronounce the name of this stream, Zanja and Sankey, and I will use them interchangeably. But now back to our story. It always comes down to water. When the crowd from Mission San Gabriel decided to establish a ranch outpost in this valley, they knew it needed water. And if they were going to teach the native peoples living in this area European forms of agriculture, it would require irrigation. So in 1819 and 20, a dirt canal was dug from Mill Creek all of the way to present-day Mission Road in Loma Linda. And while an estancia only existed here until about 1834, the water and the ditch endured. And in this part of the San Bernardino Valley, from the 1860s on, people chose to settle where they had access to water. So it's no surprise that the first ranches and homes of that period were along the Sankey. Remember, no water, no Redlands. In his 1873 book, California for Health, Pleasure, and Residence, Charles Nordhoff wrote about our area that the valley has an abundance of running water, constant the year round. Of course, where irrigation is practiced, the farmer is tolerably independent of droughts. The first concentration of settlers in this area created a town they called Ligonia, after the Lugo family who received the grant of Rancho San Bernardino in the 1840s, and who used the Sankey for their own operation. The southern boundary of Livonia was the Sankey. After Ed Judson and Frank Brown, who came to Livonia in the late 1870s, decided to go into real estate and create the Red Lands Colony, they looked to the area south of the Sankey. So here's how they envisioned their new town. The ribbon-like feature across the center is the Sankey. Prospect House, the first hotel in Redlands, was located in present-day Prospect Park and operated by Dr. Ellen Brown Seymour, Redlands' first physician. Water from the Sankey had to be carried all of the way up the hill whenever they needed it. When the Chicago colony crowd established downtown Redlands, they did it along the Sankey. Here you can see State Street between 5th and 6th, with the trees lining the Sankey in the background. The dirt road just to the left of the channel is an aptly named street, which today is called Redlands Boulevard. Then it was named Water Street. The bridge at the left is today's intersection of 5th Street at Redlands Boulevard, with Water Street just to its left. And while we're on place names, let's look at a couple. Sylvan Boulevard, seen on the left. Have you ever thought about why it's so named? It's because of all of the trees that grew along the banks of the Zanja. Here's another. Brookside Avenue. So named because when the street was laid, it went right along the Zanja. Along Brookside near Tennessee Street was the Jenny Davis estate known as the Alders, and named that because of the alder trees that grew along the Sankey through her property. This 1887 map is one of the first to show how both the towns of Livonia and Redlands were situated, and refers to downtown Redlands along the Sankey as the Union Town Site. You can see here the route of the Sankey, all of the way to what was then known as Old San Bernardino, the site of the first estancia here of Mission San Gabriel, along Mission Road. And now you know why Mission Road was so named. The map also makes it clear that the dividing line between Livonia and Redlands was the Sankey, and you had to cross a literal bridge to go from one to the other. In those early days, a number of people who intended to settle in the East Valley started out by camping along the Sankey. When the descendants of Ben Barton were looking to sell tracts in the Barton Ranch, the two most important features they called out were the new railroads and the water. And in the illustrations on the beautiful map, here you see the Zanja filled with water, and the water also being used to turn a water wheel. Now, when I was sifting through the library's collections in preparation, I came across this map of Rancho San Bernardino, which was a land grant to the Lugo and Sepulveda families in 1842 while California was still part of Mexico. The way it's shaped reminded me a little of the map of the city of Los Angeles. See the skinny bit so LA can take the port? So I looked at it and wondered, what was that all about? I discovered that this 1888 irrigation map of the area actually included the Rancho boundaries on it, but didn't name the boundary symbols. Here you can see it highlighted. Close up, you can see where Redlands is situated along the thin part on the right. And when the Zanja is overlaid, it makes perfect sense. The Lugos wanted land that had access to water. Knowing the need for water, successive waves of people to the valley expanded water supplies with additional ditches like the Tenny Ditch, the Sunnyside Ditch, the Barry Roberts Ditch, and the Redlands Canal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Judson and Brown bought as much water as they could for their Redlands colony in the early 1880s, but they knew they would have to find a better water supply if Redlands was going to thrive. Frank Brown created the answer, Bear Valley Reservoir, today known as Big Bear Lake. This was such an impressive feat that it was featured in an 1890 article in Scribner's magazine. The third dam is the one across the Bear Valley in San Bernardino County, California. Its principle, that of the arch, is entirely different from that of the two dams already described, and the structure would attract attention anywhere for the boldness of its design. Popularly speaking, it is a carefully constructed but surprisingly thin wall, curving upstream and keyed securely into the rocky banks. It holds back the water not on account of its weight, but because the arch which forms it transmits the pressure to the sides of the canyon. It is but 20 feet thick at base and less than 3 at the top. By occupying a position of great natural advantage, this reservoir, with a dam but 60 feet high, covers an area of 2,250 acres and holds 10,000 million gallons. The Bear Valley Dam was an impressive feat, in part because it was the least expensive solution to the challenge. Big Bear Lake was created to be a permanent water supply for Redlands. And while the good people of Big Bear probably believe it's their lake, it's our water. Capacity was dramatically increased in 1912 with the creation of a new, higher, multiple arch dam. In the fall of 2018, the reservoir level was so low that you could actually see Frank Brown's masterpiece begin to emerge from the water. The water from the lake traveled to Redlands through flumes, down the mountains, and into ditches, bringing the water to Redlands. So if we take a look at this map again, we can see that the Redlands Canal, carrying Bear Valley water, is what enabled South Redlands to develop, because the water was still at a high enough elevation when it arrived here that it could be used in the heights. You may have driven on Reservoir Road, but do you know where the reservoir is in Reservoir Canyon? Today, it's Ford Park, in between Redlands Boulevard and Interstate 10. And it was picturesque. If there is one natural resource with which our valley is blessed, it's rock, and we have used it everywhere. Retaining walls, gutters, on paths and roads, as an artistic element for walls, like this one at the Burridge Mansion on Crescent Avenue, or this one as it rises up from Garden Street toward south. Stone was used everywhere. But by the 1920s, the stone-lined Sankey through downtown Redlands was an odd thing. Buildings were built on top of it, and save storm runoff, less and less water flowed through it because the city of Redlands acquired more of the rights to the water and diverted it long before it reached downtown. Enter the state of California and its plan for the creation of Highway 99 through Redlands. The plans for the highway involved condemning the first 40 feet of the south side of Central Avenue, formerly Water Street, through downtown. What was the complication here? The Sankey. So the state decided the Sankey had to be rerouted before the highway could be built, right down Central Avenue. Here you can see the enormous project, but only a year later would be the beginning of the most significant public works project in Redlands because of the Great Depression. President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal featured a number of major programs, including the creation of the Works Progress Administration. The basic idea was to create jobs constructing important projects across the country. You may be familiar with the more visible WPA projects in Redlands, like the Hall of Justice building on 5th Street, or the Assistencia, but there was so much more. If only Esri had existed in 1935, we might not have needed a WPA project to create new maps. Many of the projects were storm drains, retaining walls, curbs, gutters, and bridges. We should all feel some local pride when reading George Hinckley's specifications for these projects that rock used in masonry shall be clean, tough, and of a quality equal to that of rock found in the Santa Ana River north of Redlands. Creating the Zanja storm ditch was one of those projects. Here you can see the specifications for the channel's creation. Here's the storm ditch with La Posada in the background and a WPA-built bridge. A real channel down the Maury Arroyo was created from Walnut Avenue all of the way to the Zanja at Brookside. And just to get your bearings, here's the location of Cope Middle School and its specifications. Roads needed to go over these storm ditches, and you can see the ditches as red lines and the new bridges as red circles. And here's the specifications, not only for the curbs and gutters, but for the bridges. New curbs were constructed all over town, and always of stone. Texas and Western streets got new curbs and a stone wall. Sunset Drive got new stone walls too. You can still see a section of this on East Sunset Drive South. But then I came across this file for WPA work at Hillside. Looks a bit the worse for wear, right? What do you think happened? Yep, it was fire. Another problem that only the WPA could solve. Redlands had a beautiful city hall, but by the 1930s, Redlanders felt they deserved a new, better, less archaic city hall. So they petitioned the WPA for a new building. What was the response? Nope, you already have one. Then, one night in 1939, and suddenly, Redlands needed a new city hall. And the WPA made sure we got it. But back to Hillside. Massive improvements in roads, gutters, curbs, and walls. Sylvan Park even was looked after. Then I came across this application for a new municipal swimming pool. But you say, we already had a municipal swimming pool at Sylvan Park called the Sylvan Plunge. There was one small challenge. Since its opening in 1923, the rules said, Monday, the pool will be open to races other than the white race. So they petitioned the WPA for a second pool because racial restrictions at the present municipal swimming pool impose inconveniences on the Mexican and colored population of Redlands. This construction will provide full-time bathing facilities for all races other than white. It's almost unbelievable today to think it was easier to build a second pool than integrate the one they already had. Even our member of Congress got involved. And the floral plunge was built at the city yard at Texas Street and Highway 99. Here you can see the layout of the new pool near the city's machine shop, gravel pit, and storage yard. The facility did include restrooms and changing rooms. The House of Neighborly Service had programs at the Floral Plunge for years, and many Redlanders learned to swim here. Well, the WPA wasn't the end of improvements in Redlands. In 1960, the city's Parks Department did a major improvement to the Sankey in Sylvan Park, including a new bridge over the Zanja, making it even nicer than it had been for everyone before. There's an open canal along the east side of Garden Street. It used to extend much further south than it does today, as that area was subdivided in the early 1960s. Even in 2021, what remains exposed still feels very treacherous. A member of a leading family in the automotive sales industry told me once that many years ago, there was the most mysterious happenings on Garden. It seems that late in the evening, cars seemed to occasionally end up in the Stone Canal, having been driven into it while going downhill. The following morning, a member of the Redlands Country Club called into Redlands Police Department that his car had been stolen, but found in the ditch. Fortunately, it seems there weren't any serious injuries from these alleged car thefts. In 2002, work was being done on the Sankey where it went under the Hatfield Buick dealership, the part on the east side of downtown that was redone for Highway 99, and it was becoming visible. The crews exposed tunnels created in the 1930s for the Sankey. An interesting and unusual look at the past. In 1975, some people who lived in Mentone mounted this bumper sticker campaign: "Make Mentone beautiful, take a rock to Redlands." On October 11th, 1975, the Redlands Facts reported an unusual event. Redlands police received an unexpected addition to their parking lot last night when someone left a 1,000-pound boulder in the northeast corner of the lot between 7 and 7:30 p.m. The only hint of a possible suspect came in the form of a bumper sticker that was pasted onto the boulder. The sticker read, "Keep Mentone beautiful, take a rock to Redlands." Officers said the boulder may have been left by owners of a 5-ton dump truck seen in the neighborhood around 7 p.m. last night. "Whoever left it there should be congratulated for their effort," said Sergeant Lewis Nelson. The rock was cordoned off with warning gates, complete with flashing yellow lights, and will remain on exhibit at least through Monday, Nelson said. You can still see the rock at First Lutheran Church. At the time it was moved, Reverend John Forster remarked, "If people cast stones at thee, why not build a rock garden?" An article in the Facts reported that, confident that the rock won't soon be stolen, the good Reverend envisioned a sobriquet to use from now on, the Church of the Rock. He'll even welcome a companion for the rock if anyone wished to deliver it. But let's get back to curbs for a moment. During the nascent days of historic preservation in Redlands, people were already aware of the challenges to keeping and maintaining this part of our built environment. In January 1975, Curtis Allen Sr. wrote a letter to the editor. "The article Tuesday about the reconstruction of Fern Avenue was very informative. It failed to mention one fact, though. Those hand-cut stone curbs were pulled out and replaced with a very common concrete curb and gutter. This may seem very minor to the street department, but I feel our old stone curbs are a strong contributing factor in the charm of our tree-lined streets. Hand-cut stone by master masons is irreplaceable today. Surely there is a way to reduce the crown in our street and save our fine old curbs." The next month, Nancy Smith contributed her perspective. "In response to Mrs. Gordon's letter in last night's paper, I agree completely with her concern about what is happening to Redlands in the name of progress. As she says, when are we going to wake up? We sat by and didn't protest when the Contemporary Club was torn down, and now we have a chain link fence to remind us of where an architectural gem once stood. We allow buildings like La Posada and McEwen's to be torn down and see them replaced by windowless concrete blocks like the General Telephone Building. Perhaps it is too late to save any of the past in downtown Redlands, but we, as citizens, must make it our concern to save what is left of the residential areas. There are lots of West Covinas, but there is only one Redlands. We must make our city planners realize that we care more about tree-lined streets and hand-cut stone curbs and 80-year-old stone walls and lovely old homes than we care about speedy access to the freeway. We must make it our business to see that stricter zoning laws are enacted to preserve the older residential areas and prevent lot splits and housing tracts. We are letting our Redlands heritage and all that makes this town unique slip away little by little, not because we don't care, but because we don't take the time. In only 12 years, Redlands will be 100 years old. I hope that when that time comes, we won't have to look at old pictures to remember how our town looked when it was still beautiful." Fortunately for all of us, Redlands Conservancy's Cutstone Curb Restoration Program helps property owners with the restoration of their curbs. The Conservancy has arranged for the City of Redlands to waive the $300 encroachment fee, and they've arranged with a stonemason to do the work for a set fee of $30 per linear foot. A property owner with 50 feet of curb would pay $1,500 for the restoration work. The contractor removes each stone, cleans it up or replaces it as needed, resets the stone, and puts on a new concrete cap. And now back to the Sankey. If you're interested in learning how this and other parts of Redlands have changed over time, I encourage you to visit the City of Redlands Hub GIS portal. Using Esri's ArcGIS, the city's GIS department took the library's copies of Sanborn maps to create a layered tool with maps and aerial photos you can use to investigate our town over time. It's an incredible tool, and I can tell you from experience that it's possible to spend large amounts of time investigating Redlands in this way. In Redlands, much of our civic identity is created around these important parts of our shared past. The Sankey was so ingrained in the minds of Redlanders that this 1933 song, Meet Me in Redlands, included the line, "There's a sweet old story, dear, that I would have you know, if you will meet us where the Zanja River flows." But the Sankey has been particularly important to University of Redlands. Here's some excited young co-eds enjoying the riparian beauty that was the Sankey in the 1910s. Bridges crossed the stream to access Sylvan Boulevard and the railroads to the south. Beginning in 1910, students put together the Zanja Fiesta, a huge production. When Alumni Greek Theater was built in 1927, the Zanja actually ran between the stage and the seats of the amphitheater, making it a real Greek theater where sound from the stage could reflect off the pooling water. And of course, students have always made great use of the Sankey. Whether as part of official programs or typical student shenanigans. And I'll close with one last reminder of the importance of the Mill Creek Zanja to Redlands and the university. It's found in their alma mater. "Oh, that dear old U of R, thy children near and far, will sing to thee and all thy glories tell, where the orange blossoms grow and the waters gently flow, that dear old U of R, we love so well." This program is dedicated to everyone who helps preserve these important parts of not only our environment, but of our civic and cultural identity. Thank you.